Hi everyone, how are you today? I hope that we are all having a beautiful day today. So my name is Teacher Yuri and welcome to our science class. In today's video, we are going to begin a new lesson about one of our most important resources, which is water. So let's begin. So these are the different vocabularies that we have prepared for you, and this might be very helpful as you go and learn this lesson for today. So first we have sources: surrounded, surface water, salt water, fresh water, brackish water, consume, salinity, groundwater, streams, reservoir, creek, well, hand pumps, aquifer, saturated, unsaturated, glaciers, ice sheets, and lake. So we have a search for the equivalent of these words in Thai. So I hope that this is going to be very helpful as we learn our lesson. So please refer to these vocabularies. Thank you. First, let us answer the question, what is water? Okay, so water is made up of tiny molecules, okay, of hydrogen and oxygen. So each one is very small that you cannot see it even with the most powerful microscope. So pure water has no color, okay, and no taste, and it doesn't smell of anything. Water exists in three forms on the earth. So we have the solid form, which are ice, hail, snow, or frost. Liquid form, which are in lakes, oceans, water from the rain, dew, fog, or mist. Now, it also has its gas form, which are steam or water vapor. So, why do we need water? Why do you think water is very important? So, water carry nutrients and waste in our body. So, water is also used to lubricate joints, to lubricate your digestive tract, and also your body tissues. Water also helps to cool your body, so especially during periods of physical activity, your exercise, or you go running or biking. So water could help your body to cool down and also hydrate your body. Next is water is used in factories, agriculture, hospitals, hotels, and basically in everything that we do, we are using water. So most of what we do, we are using water. Whether we are eating, we drink water. Whether we are doing our laundry, we use water. We clean the house, we use water. So water is very important. Water is indeed one of one of our most important resources. So we and all other living organisms, we need water in order to survive. So where can we find water? Now, we are going to learn about all the water sources that we have. So let's take a look at a globe. Now, the color blue represents the water. So mostly by oceans, but also by lakes, rivers, and other fresh water. So mostly the water in our surface are mostly salt water, which are from the ocean and from the sea, and also from lakes, rivers, and other forms of fresh water. So they altogether constitute our hydrosphere. While the green ones represent the land consisting of continents and islands. So the biggest area in the surface of the earth is filled up with water. Actually, 70% of the earth's surface is water and 30% land. So only 30% of our earth, of the surface of the earth is land. The rest is already water. But not every water that we can see on the surface of the earth is actually safe to consume. Actually, 97.5% of it is salt water, and only 2.5% is fresh water. Okay, so we will go in depth with salt water and fresh water later on in our lesson. So if you look at the map, the southern part of Thailand is surrounded by two seas. So these are South China Sea and also the Andaman Sea. Okay, so seas and oceans are some examples of what we call the surface water source. So what are surface water source and what are other surface water sources? Okay, so we are going to learn about those as we continue. So surface water source is the water on the earth's surface. Okay, so what you can see on the globe, the blue ones, the colored blue ones are consisting of a surface water source. So they are on the earth's surface. So surface water is any body of water above the ground. Okay, so it includes streams, rivers, lakes, wetlands, reservoirs, creeks, and the ocean and the seas. Despite of it being salt water, it is also considered as surface water because it is right at the surface of the earth. It is water that is above the ground. Okay, so as we have said, one of the examples of our surface water sources are seas and oceans. So about 97.5% of water on Earth is found on the seas and ocean. Although it's a lot, you might think that we have a limited supply of water. But sadly, they are bodies of salt water. What is salt water? Salt water basically is water with high salt content. Okay, so we cannot be able to consume or use salt water because of its high salt content. Okay, if you've tried to taste the water from the sea or from the ocean, we can basically describe it as being salty. It's like a water with a ton of salt put into it. So we are not able to drink that water or use it at all. Now, the next examples are the rivers and lakes. So they are also surface water sources. Now, a river, it is a stream of water that flows into the sea. Okay, so it is a body of water that can flow into the sea or into other streams or rivers as well. Now, so lake is usually a body of water surrounded by land. Okay, so lake is a body of water with lands surrounding it. So as you can see on the picture, that it is surrounded by mountains, it is surrounded by land. So it is in the middle. So the lake is in the middle. So the water on the lake cannot flow. Okay, it does not flow out of the lake. Now, rivers and lakes are actually sources of fresh water. Okay, so they are the water in them is generally it has a very low or no salt at all. So fresh water is generally characterized by having low concentrations of dissolved salt or no salt at all. So basically, water from rivers and lakes we can consume. Okay, so fresh water are water that we can consume or use, while salt water is a water with high concentration, high salt content, which we cannot use or consume. Okay, so healthy freshwater environments can actually supply water for drinking. They can also be used for growing crops. They can be used for manufacturing, for energy and transport. Okay, So let's go to the next example of surface water source. Now the next example of our surface water source is the swamp. Okay, here are different pictures of swamps. As you can see, they are a land area flooded with water. So the water in a swamp can be salt water, brackish water, or fresh water. Okay, so let's go take a look at, we already know what is salt water, we already know what is fresh water. Let's take a look at the brackish water. So brackish water is water occurring in a natural environment with having more salinity than fresh water. So basically it has more salt than a fresh water, but has lesser salt than seawater. So it is not as salty as the seawater or the salt water. So it may result from mixing seawater with fresh water together. Most of the time, brackish water are in areas where the water from the sea and water from the river meet, so they are mixed together and then they form brackish water. It's more salty than fresh water, but it is less salty than the seawater. So that is a brackish water. Some organisms can actually survive in a brackish water. It depends on their adaptation, but there are organisms that can survive and live in a brackish water. So where does water from the well and hand pump come from? So usually in some areas, or especially in some remote areas, I think people's source of fresh water are coming from the wells and hand pumps. So the old way actually of taking water from the ground is through wells and hand pumps. So where is the water coming from? So there is the water that's coming out of hand pumps and wells are coming from the ground. Okay, so the water below the surface of the earth are called ground water. So they are water from below the surface of the earth, so from underground. Now usually when you build a hand pump or you make a well, you're going to dig underground. Now that is where the water is coming from. So it is called ground water. If the surface water is from the surface of the earth above the ground, groundwater basically are water that is from below the surface of the earth. Now, in order for us to understand what is groundwater, let us take a look and let us watch the next video so that we will be able to learn where this groundwater is coming from, where does it go, and how do we use them.
We all know the Earth is full of water, but there's a lot more to water than all that blue stuff you see on the globe. The water we can see on the surface of the Earth is surface water. Surface water is every lake, pond, river, stream, and ocean on Earth. But in the ground below your feet, there's even more water, groundwater. Groundwater is water that's crammed in the tiny gaps between rocks, soils, and sediments under the ground. A full body of groundwater is called an aquifer. There are huge aquifers all across America. The biggest is the High Plains Aquifer, which covers 174,000 square miles right in the middle of the country. Anything that big deserves a closer look. Let's say you could grab a shovel and dig straight down through the soils to an aquifer. The level underground where you first hit groundwater is called the water table. Below the water table, the ground is completely soaked or saturated with water, which is why this area is called the saturated zone. The area above the water table is called the unsaturated zone. So, how does all this water end up in the ground? Well, it's all a part of the good old water cycle. When it rains, some water gets soaked up by plants. Some water runs off the soil and into streams, lakes, or even the ocean. Other water gets stuck on the surface and eventually evaporates back into the air. Meanwhile, some of the lucky water droplets get to travel down through the surface deep underground until they reach the water table and become a part of an aquifer. Once water seeps down deep enough into the ground, it can stay there for a really long time. Some of the water stored in the deepest parts of aquifers has been there for thousands of years. But after it gets there, groundwater doesn't always stay in the ground. A lot of the water on the surface comes from aquifers. If the surface of the ground dips below the water table, groundwater flows out into the space, creating a body of surface water. If the surface water dries up, groundwater can flow in to fill it back up. And if the water table in this area rises, so does the level of the surface water. Groundwater can also pour down a sloping surface, creating streams. Any place where groundwater flows out into the surface is called a spring. Surface water can also become groundwater. If a body of surface water flows above the water table, water can seep down through the sediment and help fill the aquifer. Of course, there's another way that groundwater can leave the ground: us. Humans depend on groundwater, and there are thousands of wells all over the country that draw water out of aquifers. In many parts of the country, the water you get from the tap comes from the ground. However, we use most of our groundwater to help grow the food we eat. Farms can get lots of the water they need from rain, but rain isn't always enough. And in dry years, farmers depend even more on the water that's stored in the ground. In fact, American farms use about 53 billion gallons of groundwater every day. That's enough to fill over 1 million bathtubs or 80,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So, if we're using that much every day, can it run out? Well, yes and no. Remember, aquifers can be refilled by rainwater or surface water seeping in from rivers and streams, so there's usually more water on its way to replenish the aquifer. But if we use groundwater faster than the aquifers can refill, we could drain them dry. They probably wouldn't be empty forever, but it would take hundreds of years for the largest aquifers to get back to healthy levels. Whether it's up here or down there, water and how we use it matters. We may not be able to see it every day, but groundwater makes our lives possible. So don't let show-offs like rushing rivers and roaring oceans get all the attention. Those unseen aquifers below ground have been here longer than we have, and with a little love and care, they'll keep on taking care of us long into the future.
Alright, so we have learned that where does groundwater come from, and that it is also one of our biggest sources of fresh water. So where else can we find fresh water? So basically that's just 2.5% of the total water source that we have. So where else can we find fresh water? So out of the 2.5% fresh water that we have, some of our fresh water are stored in the glaciers and ice sheets. Okay, so out of the 2.5%, imagine that some of our fresh water are frozen inside the glaciers and ice sheets. So a glacier is a huge mass of ice that moves slowly over land. Okay, so glaciers are formed by fallen snow that is accumulated over many years and compressed into ice. Glacier forms in places where snow accumulates over time. It takes so many years for glaciers to form. Sometimes they form into these very big mountainous glaciers. So these are glaciers are pure ice. So they are when the snow hits and then it accumulates, and as over time, in so many years, especially in Antarctica or Greenland where the snow never stops, then it accumulates over time, and then the lower part of the glacier will be pushed down by the upper part, which compresses it, and it becomes ice. So but it takes a very long time for the glaciers to be able to form. An ice sheet, however, is a type of glaciers that covers a large area. Okay, so it covers, for example, the land of Antarctica and Greenland is covered by a thick ice sheets. Okay, thick ice sheets. So it's glaciers that is covering a land area. So that is what we call ice sheets. All right. So glaciers and ice sheets are actually fresh water. Okay, it is from fresh water. So out of the 2.5% that we have some of our fresh water frozen through glaciers and ice sheets. All right, that is the end of our lesson for today, guys. We still have a lot of sources of fresh water. We are going to continue with that on our next lesson. So have a great day, and I'll see you on the next lesson. Bye.